I am a teacher. I am not a preacher. I have only preached 2 sermons in my life, and the whole time I was preparing them, I was saying, God, why? Why? How did I get myself into this? Some of you may be asking yourselves sometimes, how did I get myself into this? But you know, God is an amazing God.
Amen.
I did not grow up a Seventh-day Adventist. I grew up a Catholic. I worked at a public school, and the principal of the school is a Seventh-day Adventist. And long story short, here I am 30-something years later as the Associate Director of Education for the Atlantic Union Conference. And I was a little young teacher in this public school saying, I will never be a principal. Well, God has plans that we know not of, right? Probably some of you never thought you would be in the position of pastoring a church, right? I would imagine. Pastor De Leon said his knees were knocking. Well, if his knees were knocking, my knees are about to fall over, because I thought, who am I to talk to people about how they should preach? I'm not a preacher, I'm a teacher. I taught for 25 years, mostly in grades 5 to 8. So I've dealt with some pretty tough audiences. If you've ever been in a room with children in grades 5 to 8, if you can get them to smile, that's a good thing. I taught for 25 years. I've been in education administration for about 13 years. And it's been a pleasure. God has blessed me so much, undeservedly. I can't even begin to tell you. And He is a wonderful God. And I come to share with you today just what I have learned and my experiences, and I hope that it can help you in some small way. I am not an expert. I did come from more than 100 miles away, but I am not an expert. I'm just here as a servant of God to share and do what I've been asked to do. So let's get started. So the question that we're going to start with today is, in your churches, who are you preaching to? And are you reaching them all? So take a minute to think about, and what I want you to do is think about the different groups of people that you are preaching to. Could be groups defined anyway. How many different groups of people can you think of that you're preaching to? Okay, go ahead, shout them out.
3 or 4 groups.
But who are the groups specifically?
Well, we've got those that are historic Adventists.
Okay.
We've got those that are new, and those that are in between.
Okay, so the generational Adventists, right? The new converts, the in-betweens, maybe even the returning. Pastor De Leon talked about a returner, right? So that's one set of groups. What other groups do we preach to? Not we, you.
Age group.
Different age groups. From the littlest to the... My mother is going to be 100 years old in August. She's not an Adventist, but still. We have some of those. Octogenarians, nonagenarians, maybe even some, what do they call them? Centenarians. So the different age groups. What other groups? Cultural groups. Any other groups that you can think of?
Spiritual.
Ooh.
Some are.
Wow. You wouldn't think that, would you?
Educational.
But that is very true. At different levels of education.
Different learning styles.
Absolutely, different learning styles. We're going to talk about today. Someone said different sexes.
Different. Some people suffer from trauma.
Yes.
So they look at things differently than other people that haven't had.
Yeah, very much so. And trauma actually neurologically changes a person's brain. Really does. And that is so huge right now in education. Trauma-informed education. How do you deal with a child that has gone through trauma? And in our world today, too much trauma. Too much trauma.
Just new people coming in, but when we're giving Bible studies to
a lady who we would say represents the ultimate in secular society. And
Okay.
it's been very, a very different experience.
Mhm.
No, basically no religious background at all, sees things or has seen things in a totally different way than we as Christians. And that those are the people we're supposed to be preaching the gospel to, but figuring out how do I do that?
Yeah, and I've had that experience too in teaching, when all of a sudden you get a student that comes into the Adventist school, it's never been in an Adventist school before, maybe not even been in church before. And I told you that I mostly taught in grades 5 to 8. So by that age, they know how to use the Bible, they know how to find texts, and you get this kid that you say, turn to Matthew 22:5, and they're like, they don't even know what to do, right? So there's some things that we don't even think about it. It's just a natural part of us, but for some it's not. So look at all these different groups of people that we're talking about. And on top of that, they all have different brains. Some are right brain, some are left brain, some learn this way, some learn that way. So how do you reach all of those people? Does it sound like an easy task? Not really. It's not an easy task. So we're going to look at learning styles today and see, is there a way we can try to reach more people? And I want you, as we go through these, to think about the groups that you feel like, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but what is it?
Randy.
Randy said he doesn't know sometimes what to do with this lady. Like, filter through, how can we reach those groups that maybe you're not reaching as much as you would like to? So here, and I'm sorry this is so small, but I'll try to go through it with you. This is from the Adventist Archives. It's some research from 2024 about generational groups in our church and how they are responding to the worship service. So this first column here says, I connect with God in a meaningful way during the worship service. The light blue, well, it doesn't look light blue up there, it is on is the group that is under 20 years of age. 18.1% said I connect with the worship in a meaningful way. Then it goes up generationally, the 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, and then the 70 plus. So the highest number is the 20, 30, 40, 50-year-olds, 33.4% say they connect in a meaningful way. That's the highest. And these are the ones that strongly agree. When I look at that, I'm like, I'd like those numbers to be a little bit higher. I don't know about you. The second column, I feel that the worship service has a positive influence on me. You can see going up the numbers, 33, 35, 36, 38, 38, 37, 37. The third one, I feel the sermon in the worship service speaks to my personal situation. Is it real for them? 17% below 20 years old feels it speaks to them. 27% in the 20-year-olds, 28% 30-year-olds, 27% 40-year-olds, 27% 50-year-olds, 26% 60-year-olds, and 26% 70 and above. Now remember, this is strongly agree, so there's still some that would have checked agree, right? I enjoy listening to the sermons in the worship service, and you can see where that falls. 45% of the 70 plus, but only 29% of the under 20. The music in the worship service helps me worship God. And I don't know if you can see those numbers there, but they're all like 30s, 40s. I'm often bored during the worship service. So the under 20s, 8.5% strongly agree. 20-year-olds, 4.7, almost 5%. 30-year-olds, 3%. 40-year-olds, 2.8%. 50-year-olds, 2.3, 62.9, and over 72.3. So that's good. There, at least it's all, well, actually all under 5% that they're bored during worship. So that's a good thing. I think we're doing good there. We're not boring them anyway. I always look forward to the worship service. You can see the numbers there. Attending worship is an inspiring experience for me, and there is a lot of joy and laughter in our church. You know, joy and laughter, I think, sometimes gets a bad rap, right? Like, Christians aren't supposed to be glum, right? Like, smile, have fun, have joy, like make people laugh. And I don't mean, you know, there's a place for humor, right? There's a place for humor. And I've seen preachers before that kind of throw little jokes in their sermon, and you know, there's a line where it can almost become irreverent, I feel, you know, but there is a place for true, pure joy. So just a little bit of statistics about the worship experience. My friend AI and I, because one day, I tell you not, I spent like 3 or 4 hours searching the writings of Ellen White about preaching. I don't know how y'all search those writings, but I didn't take the class on how to do that. Because I'm like, whew, this is overwhelming. So then I said, oh yeah, remember my little friend AI over there. So AI says that Ellen White says about preaching, speak simply. Speak simply. Remember, you have all kinds of people, some that their understanding of English is not great, different cultures, different age group. So you have to speak simply so that people can understand. Use illustration. Jesus used illustration all the time when he spoke, didn't he? Make the truth practical. You know, don't just stand up there and blah, 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 blah. And don't, you know, when Pastor De Leon spoke this morning several times, he kind of gave you a little nudge. Do this for your people, do this for your people, make it practical. Reach the heart. That's so important because look at, I love this equation on the bottom. Truth understood plus truth felt equals transformation. If your preaching is not transforming, is it doing its job? If someone understands, but they don't feel anything about it, there are people that know the Bible better than anyone in this room, but they don't feel anything in their heart. They're not transformed. There are people that feel all kinds of stuff, but they don't understand anything, right? You need the two together to get true transformation. I love this quote that I did stumble upon. Even the crowd that so often thronged his steps was not to Christ an indiscriminate mass of human beings. He spoke directly to every, what does it say? Mind, and appealed to every heart, understanding and feeling, right? Mind and heart. He watched the faces of his hearers, marked the lighting up of the countenance, the quick responsive glance, which told that truth had reached the soul, and there vibrated in his heart the answering chord of sympathetic joy. Jesus knew when he was reaching the people, when he was not reaching the people. And he changed his methods as he needed to reach the people he was trying to reach. And of course, it comes from education. Because what's my favorite Ellen White book? Education. Actually, that principal that was in the school, the public school I was in, that brought me into the church, gave me the book Education before I even knew who Ellen White was, what a Seventh-day Adventist was. So that was the first book I ever read before even knowing the significance of that book. So we're going to look today at the same truth in 3 different ways. Okay? And It is trusting God in uncertainty. And it's interesting that Pastor De Leon spoke about Peter this morning, because we are going to speak about Peter this afternoon as well. From the text in Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 to 33, and you probably all know it better than I do, walking on the sea. So I'm reading from the King James Version.
What was that again?
Matthew chapter 14, starting at verse 22. And straightway Jesus constrained his disciples to get into a ship and to go before him unto the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up into a mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with the waves, for the wind was contrary. And in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went unto them walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, It is a spirit. And they cried out in fear. But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water. And he said, Come. And when Peter was come down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw the wind boisterous and beginning to sink, he cried, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? And when they were come into the ship, the wind ceased. Then they that were in the ship came and worshipped him, saying, Of a truth, thou art the Son of God. Now, I need 3 volunteers to come on up here. You know, teachers, we've got to involve the class, right? I need 3 volunteers. Come on, 3 brave souls. There's 1. Thank you. This is for you. 2 more. Okay, this is for you. And number 3. Okay, take a minute, look those over. We're going to deliver this truth in 3 ways. We read the passage from the scripture. Let me know when you're ready.
To read it?
Our good volunteers are going to read it out loud.
Okay. Me first?
Doesn't matter. Okay, you ready? Okay, go ahead. In your best preacher sermon-y voice.
Imagine being in the boat that night. The wind is loud, the waves are crashing, and it's dark. You can barely see. And suddenly there was a figure walking towards you on the water. You think it's a ghost. Then you hear a voice you know well. It is I. Do not be afraid. Peter steps out. For a moment, he is doing the impossible. Then he notices the wind, and he begins to sink. And what does Jesus do? Immediately, he reaches down and grabs him. That's the kind of Savior we have. Even when our faith filters, his hand is already reaching.
Amen.
Matthew 14 shows a clear progression of faith. First, Jesus sends the disciples into the storm. Second, he comes to them in the middle of their fear. Third, Peter steps out in faith. Fourth, when Peter shifts his focus from Christ to the wind, he begins to sink. This passage teaches a simple principle. Faith grows when our focus stays on Jesus. Fear grows when our focus shifts to circumstances. The central lesson is this: truth is sustained by keeping our eyes on Christ, not the storm. Trust is sustained by keeping our eyes on Christ, not on the storm.
Amen.
Thank you. Your turn.
All right, so let me ask you a question today. How many of you are facing some type of pressure, whatever it is? What storm are you facing today? Is it bills?
How much time is that?
Huh? You can't show me hand. I guess all of you are like so comfortable, no pressure. No pressure is
No,
happening.
never.
No pressure is happening. Facing a lot of pressure, right? A lot of storms is passing your way. So let me see now. As you are facing your storm, where or who your eyes are fixed on?
Mine is on
Is it fixed on the storm that you're going through? Or is it fixed on Christ?
Jesus. Mine is.
Yours is on Jesus? Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. Now, this week, as you go through this coming week, I encourage you to make sure that your eyes are fixed on Christ. When the pressure comes, ask yourself, Lord, keep my eyes on you no matter what. Keep my eyes on you. Because this same Jesus who helped Peter is also willing to help you.
Wow, amen. There's a preacher. You had 5 seconds to review that. Okay, so stay there for a minute, guys, so they can remember who read what. Which version appealed to you most and why? Think about, this was kind of the story of what was happening. This happened first, this happened next, this is what it means, and this was the questions. Which one appealed to you most? The last one, why?
The last one for me, because it was more or less like an encouragement or pick up.
Okay.
Engaging. The last one is because he goes straight to me.
Straight to you. Okay. Anyone else?
The first one too, actually, I didn't like the second one.
Ah, sorry, Pastor.
Can I get a second shot?
Why did you like the first one?
I mean, it wasn't as maybe as deep as the story, biblical story, if you read it straight through, but it covered everything, and it was, correct, and it was good listening too, as far as just the oral listening part of it.
Mhm.
Certainly the last one was more entertaining,
Mhm.
and reach, but I could handle the first one.
Okay. Anybody like the second one best?
Yeah, the second one was educating. It talks about covering the various what's it, phases of faith. Jesus
Or trust, I think.
into the storm.
The steps and
Yes,
the lessons.
the different steps. That I found that educating. I liked it.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Appreciate it. I figured I can't do preaching. I have to have the real preachers do the preaching, right? So that was 3 different styles or 3 different ways to present the same message. And the same one didn't appeal to everyone in here. So why is that? That's because we have different types of people in our pews. And we're going to talk today about these 4 different types of learning styles. But I will tell you, if you Google learning styles, these are the 4 basic ones, but you're going to get all kinds of variations. They're going to be called different things. Sometimes experiential learners, it's called kinesthetic learners. Sometimes you'll have sensory learners thrown in there, all kinds of different types of names, but these are generally the 4 basic types of learners, which are the analytical learners, the auditory learners, the visual learners, and the experiential learners. So if we think of those 3 samples of very short sermons that we just heard, which one do you think was the analytical one? Say it again? Exactly, number 2. Analytical, in order. This is what happened. First this happened, then this happened, this happened. Then what does it mean? This is what it means. Which one do you think was the auditory one? The first one. Why? It was what? It was story-based, right? Maybe visual a little mixed in there too. Which one was the experiential? Obviously the last one, right? Relating to your life. So we're going to go through each one of these. And Pastor De Leon, if you don't mind, we're going to use your sermon as an example. And I think you covered them all pretty well. So the analytical, they love doctrine, they love structure, prophecy, depth. When I read this, I thought, ooh, those are the ones like my husband that love the Daniel Revelation seminars. My husband and I, by the way, both were Catholics and both were baptized on the same day together. Now, when that happened, people were like, oh, congratulations, what a blessing that you're baptized together. I'm just like, yeah, whatever, we do everything together. We're married, why wouldn't we baptize? Now, 30-something years later, I understand what a blessing that is. So God has worked amazingly in my life, and I'm grateful. But he loved those prophecies and the days and the symbols and the blah, 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 blah. And my eyes glaze over. And I had to teach that stuff in 8th grade to 8th graders. And I taught it. And then I forgot it till the next year when I had to learn it again because this is not me. Not me. They respond to text-based information. They're your readers and writers. And they would ask, is there a manual for this? What is the step-by-step? What do I have to do? What's step-by-step? So, what part of Pastor De Leon's sermon this morning do you think could have fallen into this analytical area?
I found when he was relating about his daughter and how it dawned on him that God was using another thing, because you had to think that through in order to
Okay.
come to the conclusion.
Okay. Anyone else?
The Bible.
The Bible. When he read all of the text, when he went through the text of the cock crowed once and the cock crowed twice and the cock crowed 3 times, and then the other, bringing it back to the Bible, right? Back to the scripture. That is the analytical part. Then we have the auditory. They connect through stories, passion, testimonies. They remember what they hear. They would ask, can you tell me? So what part of his sermon hit these auditory learners?
Do you love me?
Do you love me? The actual words of Jesus, right? And you know, it's very interesting because I've heard that text many, many times, do you love me, right? But when he read the text from the Bible this morning and said, do you love me more than these? I thought, I never really realized it said more than these before as I was looking at the text. And don't you know, he spoke about that. And I was like, whoa, like the Lord was setting up my mind for what was to come. Do you love me? The words of Jesus. The auditory learners are going to connect with that.
And don't you think that even it's not just hearing it, but how it's proclaimed?
Absolutely.
The delivery.
Absolutely. Delivery is so important. So important. You know, we've all been to a seminar or a sermon or something, or someone's out there and they're going like that, and you just want to put your head down and go to sleep, right? Because we can't, you know, we're human beings. We react to humanness, not to flat, boring. Reminds me of that. I don't even remember the movie, but it's a video clip and it's in a classroom and the teacher's going, anyone, 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 anyone? And the kid, maybe, and the kids are like falling asleep on their desk, drool coming, you know, delivery. Yes, absolutely. Okay, the visual learners, they remember images, diagrams, key phrases. They respond to graphics and videos. Can you demonstrate that? What part of Pastor De Leon's sermon hit the visual learners? And I know for me what.
The fire.
Yeah, he kept creating a picture of the fire, and what that fire meant, right? The other one, I want to go back for a second to the analytical. I loved this because another thing is human beings aren't cut and dry, right? Most human beings are gray, not black and white, right? So everyone's going to have a little bit of some of these styles mixed in, but they're going to have a tendency toward one more than the others. So for me, I'm definitely a visual learner. When someone's talking to me and they're like, blah, 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 I'll be like, show me. Can I see it? I always have to see it. I don't want to just hear it. I have to see it. But when he, at the end of his sermon, connected the first fire to the first atom in the first tree and the second fire to the second atom in the second tree, that's analytical too, bringing it to another level of higher thinking. So the fire, for sure, visual. For visual, it says one key phrases. At Academy Connect the other day, Pastor Emmanuel Contreras, who is our new youth vice principal at the Union, he was speaking to the kids, and his sermon was based on one decision away, which was so relevant for young people. And he talked about a friend of his who ended up in jail because he started embezzling money from the bank he was working for. And he said, one day he made a decision to do this, took a little bit of money, was going to pay it back, and then a little bit more, then a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. Before you know it, he was in this. But it was that one decision the first time he did it. And he kept saying, one decision away, one decision away. So that key phrase that is repeated, that is brought back, that's going to stick with your visual learners. And the last one are experiential learners. They need application, reflection, personal relevance. They learn by doing. They're kinesthetic learners. They need that hands-on learning. And you think of the visual, the auditory, but then you get to this experiential and you're like, how do you do that in a sermon? It's not like we're going to give manipulatives to everyone in the pews. I mean, I suppose you could, right? I don't know. But they ask themselves, how does this change my life this week? Can I try it myself? They want to know, how can I do it? So what part of his sermon hit this experiential level? The daughter's story, absolutely, made it real. I know when I was sitting there, I could connect that to something in my life. Could any of you? Absolutely, because we all go through those fires, right? Sometimes preachers call them storms or whatever it may be. If they're preaching about, who's that guy? David, they might say the battle, right? But whatever it is, that experiential that brings it to the life. So those are the four: analytical, auditory, visual, and experiential. So now we're going to do a little something for you to figure out what is your learning style. Does anybody know what their learning style is already? Like I said, I know for sure I'm a visual learner, and I did this quiz, and guess what? It came out top, visual learner. So just take a minute to do this very simple quiz. It continues on the back. Okay, I think we're ready. So to score it, what is happening here? Okay, so you're going to add the total number of responses. How many A's did you circle? How many B's did you circle? How many C's did you circle? And then count how many of each. Remember, we said many people have more than one learning style, but there's one probably that you'll have a greater number of responses in. So count how many A's, how many B's, how many C's. And you'll notice there's not 4, so this quiz obviously left out one of our learning styles. Like I said, you'll find all kinds of variations. Okay, if the majority of your responses were A's, you are a visual learner. If they were B's, you are an auditory learner. And if they are C's, you're a kinesthetic or tactile learner, or we called it here, you remember which one? Experiential. Was anybody surprised how they came out?
If it's equal.
Hmm?
If it's equal.
Just means you're well balanced.
It's equal. All three are equal.
5A, 5B.
And any C?
No.
Wow, that's unusual. So you're a very visual auditory learner and not so much experiential. That is very interesting. How many visual learners? How many auditory learners? Not me. Any kinesthetic or experiential learners? Okay, awesome. So you see, even in this small group, we have a variety. And we had only one that raised a hand for experiential. But if I only speak to the auditory and the visual, what happens with that person? They're tuned out, or they're walking away going, well, that was nice, but I didn't get anything out of it, right? So you want to reach everybody when you preach. Here is an interesting thing as I did my research that I found, and this came from Ministry Magazine from an article titled Growing Disciples Through Transformational Learning. So now you'll see we have this vertical axis. That's how we perceive things. So on the top, we have those who experience things subjectively through experiencing, sensing, feeling, intuition. Those are our subjective people. Then on the other end of the spectrum, we have those that objectively perceive things through conceptualizing, thinking, and intellect. So on the top, we have the experiencers, and on the bottom, we have the intellectuals. Two distinct types of thinking and learning. Then we have this horizontal axis. On the left-hand side, we have the active doers. And then on the right-hand side, we have the reflectors and the observers. So we have experiencers and intellectuals. We have doers and reflectors. Now, you can fall anywhere on this grid, right? And you may be exactly in the middle of two of them. You may be heavy way down here in the corner of this one. So human beings aren't cut and dried, and neither are our brains, right? We have a lot of right brain processes and left brain processes. And even if we have a tendency toward more right brain or more left brain, and I'm not a brain expert, so don't ask me what all that means, but we still use both sides of our brain. We tend to use one more. But if you hit all of these, then you're speaking to the whole brain. And if you're speaking to the whole brain, the chance of more people catching the message is ensured. So we have the experiential doers. They're going to ask, what if I use this information this way? They are the dynamic learners, always twisting and changing and see how things, they're the ones that are going to go up to you at the end of your sermon and shake your hand and ask you a question. Well, did you ever think about it this way? Right? Do you have those people? Yeah, of course you do. Then on the right-hand side, you have the experiential reflectors. So they're going to say, why do I need to know this information? They're relational learners. They're trying to put the pieces together in their life. Then on the bottom left, we have the intellectual doers. How does this information fit what I need to know? They're the practical learners. What is this going to do for me? And then on the right-hand side, we have the intellectual reflectors who are going to say, what do I need to know about this subject. They're going to be your analytic learners. So here is kind of a different way of looking at learning styles. So obviously, if we look at our 4 learning styles that we talked about earlier, where are our auditory and visual learners going to lie on this grid, do you think?
The act of doing.
The experiential doer? Could be. Dynamic? I think they're going to fall, well, definitely. So the 2 that I think you can most easily drop into this grid are the experiential and the analytical, right? The experiential are going to go on top. The analytical are going to go on bottom, right? And then the visual and the auditory can go kind of anywhere around in this grid. So how can you use this to prepare a sermon? According to this article, Growing Disciples Through Transformational Learning, there are 4 learning cycle questions to consider in sermon preparation. So if we think of those 4 quadrants, the experiential doers, the experiential reflectors, the intellectual doers, and the intellectual reflectors, you're going to think first, why should my listener find this subject important? That's the hook of your sermon. Maybe a story that you start with, maybe a question that you start with, but something that's going to pull them in. The second thing, what does my listener need to know about this subject? That's where you're going to put the facts in, right? The Bible facts, the Bible story, the information, the body of the sermon, the veggie meat of the sermon, right? Then third, how can my listener use this information in everyday life? And then fourth, what if my listener puts this information into practice? What would their life look like? So 4 questions that you can use that if you write your sermon, you go back and ask yourself these questions. Does it hit all of these? Will it hit the intellectual doer, the intellectual reflector, the experiential doer, the experiential reflector, the analytical learners, visual learners, auditory learners, and experiential learners? Yes, sir.
I just want to get your thoughts out. I read a book one time called Why Men Hate Going to Church. And he was breaking it down. Basically, if I remember, the premise was that the way we do church, it's more appealing to women, how it's set up, because we do a lot more feeling. The singing is very high pitched a lot of times in church, and men don't hit that range. And so the doing part, like men may want to fix things. They don't want to hear about problems, they want to fix them. And so the person was saying, he wasn't being critical as much as just noting,
Yeah.
men don't like to go to church because it's, the way it's set up, that women feel more comfortable going to church. I'm just curious, as your little chart there, do you see, I mean, is it fair to say that men tend to gravitate more toward the experiential doing side or the active doing, and females more reflecting, or is that too broad of a brush? How do you?
Well, I don't know. I can give you my opinion. My opinion, I would agree with you that men want to know, so what does this do for me? How can I use this? How can I fix this? How can this fix the problem that I'm having in my life? Or where women more are gonna think about it and, put it around in their mind. And so, yeah, I think so. I think it's definitely true.
Why are most theologians men?
You don't want me to answer that. There's a lot of answers to that question.
I know, besides sexism, I mean, that there's a thing where it's not a hands-on.
Well,
it's more conceptualization and intellectual.
And I think the male mind tends to be more analytical often than the female mind. Not always, but often. The men are going to be your engineers, your architects, those types of things. You're going to find more men in those fields than women because they tend toward the makeup of the male mind. And you know, some people think, oh, that's not true, a brain is a brain, but their research shows there are actual difference between a male and a female mind. And one time I saw a presentation that I've never, because remember I told you I'm what kind of learner? Visual, right? And it was a visual, and I've remembered it to this day. They said, this is the female mind, this is the male mind. The male mind was a simple radio, old-fashioned radio with 2 or 3 knobs. The female mind was a radio that had like 25 different buttons on it, because the female mind sees all those little things and the male mind just sees what it is. You know, my husband gets so angry with me when I say, are you looking with your man eyes? It's right in front of your face. But yeah, men tend to be more analytical. And I think, you know, when you're really getting deep, digging into the word and, you know, doing all those big words that I don't know what they mean, like exegesis and all that. Was that the right word? Yeah. You know, they like to do that. I don't know. Part of it could be cultural. I don't know.
I noticed in the last thing it used the word perceiving in the last slide. I think it was that perceiving. That to me is the problem. One of the problems is you can have 4 people looking at the same accident or the same thing, and 4 people come up with totally different. You know, in giving Bible studies, I'm thinking I'm going in the right direction, and we're headed for there. And I ask him a question,
And then you're like,
give me an answer.
You're like, were you here?
I wasn't even leading this Bible study, but the guy was doing a great job. He was working on the Antichrist, blah blah blah, leading this woman to, you know, the papacy, you know, and so he says to her, so who do you think this is? And she says, Donald Trump.
Oh, goodness gracious.
I almost fell off my chair. You know, I mean, it's like, what? How?
Yeah.
How?
That's why we have 4 gospels.
Well, yeah, but
And that's the thing too, on that chart, how we perceive and how we process make up our learning style. So it's 2 separate processes, right? Perceiving the information and then processing the information. It's when the 2 of them come together, that's where you get your learning style.
So that poses a problem, though.
Because
yeah, it is.
Because, for instance, when you talk about processing, so when we read the Bible and we're talking about spiritual things that are spiritually deserved, when we read the Bible on the surface, one could just get a practical meaning from it. And then when you dig below the surface, then we can start drawing this spiritual aspect of what it is actually saying.
mm-hmm.
You know, so how do we reconcile the perception as preachers for the listeners?
Yeah, and that's why so many people can take the same text and get so many different things out of it, right? But the title of the presentation was One Message, Many Minds. So there's only one message, right? So what is the truth? And that truth can't be twisted. It has to be the truth, the whole, right? The whole truth and nothing but the truth, right? The whole truth. Because don't some people sometimes love to pull one little text to prove a point that is not being used correctly, or one little piece of writing from Ellen White, but they're not giving the whole picture. And therefore, they're giving a false impression, right? And that's dangerous. Okay, so take some time now to reflect personally, and I see my time is pretty much up, so we'll go through this quickly. But just reflect very quickly for yourself. You can write it down if you want, you can just think about it. What things are you the strongest in? Teaching, storytelling, doctrine, application, visual, simplicity, participation, emotion, and which of those things do you think you could do better with? Just take a moment or two to think about that. Okay, does anyone want to share? You don't have to because it's just personal reflection for you, but I want to give you the opportunity to, if you want to, what you feel strong in and what you feel you could do better with. For me, I'll tell you, I feel like I'm a very strong teacher, but I don't feel like I'm a very strong storyteller. And it's interesting because people would think a teacher would naturally be a storyteller, right? But I don't feel like that's my strength. When I'm asked to do the children's story at church, I pain over it for hours. And then, does it come off good? Yeah, it's fine. But I don't feel like naturally I'm a storyteller. I feel like that's something I have to work at. Anyone want to share? Yes.
Yeah, for me, I think when it comes to teaching, I'm comfortable doing that. I prefer teaching up front. But for me, the application is the most challenging because when you're doing evangelism, making appeals, or when you're preaching, making appeals is touching the heart. That's what we're told. And trying to find ways to touch the heart, trying to find ways to not make it sound gimmicky, trying to be genuine. That's something that I'm always, I feel like I need to do better. I need to get better. I don't like listening to myself closing sermons because that was weak. That was weak. You hear that? You're not touching hearts.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's for me something that I have to keep working on.
And I don't think you're alone in that, because something that I read as I was researching for this presentation said a lot of times you'll see in a sermon there's all this stuff and then the application is like 2 little sentences at the end, when it should be really a strong part of the sermon equal to the other parts. Did you want to say something, Pastor?
Yes, I think for me, the one, I agree with Pastor Miguel, application, that's something that I strive for. But one of the key things that I try to do, and I need growth in that, is simplicity.
Mm.
Because, as a person who has been trained in research and all of those practical scientific things, I've been trained in that way in my former profession. So I have to now try, and that's why I try to lean towards storytelling, because that makes it a lot more simpler. And for me, really, it's the application part, but striving to be simple enough that someone, a little child, can grasp the message.
Very good. But I like how you said, this is what's difficult for me, but this is how I've found to kind of try to strengthen that weakness. Yes.
For me, like when I started preaching, I used to read a lot. And, over time, I started more to get into the storytelling. And when I became a teacher, then I kind of packaged everything together. And one of the things that has helped me, you brought a quotation earlier about Ellen G. White when she talked about simplifying the message. Once you simplify the message, taking in your audience, making sure that when you're preaching, that everybody can understand the message that you are delivering. And I have very harsh critiques in my family. My wife is a teacher, and my teenagers are
Teenagers.
they're brutal when they're
Brutally honest.
one of the things that they tell me sometimes, as preachers, we want to get detailed about some things. That, my wife said, you went too much in the weeds.
Mm.
And when you do that, you lose people. When we start to go into details, we lose people. So, so I like the part that if we can channel teaching, storytelling, and the simplicity, and combine that with the doctrine, I think that we could go a long way.
Yeah. Can we take a few more minutes? I know we're over our time. So turn and talk. Let's apply this back to our question that we had in the beginning. What groups do you preach to, and who is the hardest to reach? So who is the hardest to reach in your church? Which group do you think connects best with their preaching? And who might be unintentionally missed? Just turn to a partner or somebody, have a little conversation about that for 1 minute.
The comment on it is that the funny thing is,
Yeah.
so the visuals are spot on. And that was the, I know, I'm trying to work on that. You know, it's an area that I need to work on. And I need to work on that. I just developed that one. And I love the application. But I just thought it was interesting how we're, kind of opposite on that, and we're probably getting some balance there.
Yeah, it's gotta be done at the same time for it to be effective. I think for me, the whole point is more like learning your own strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
But to me, overall, it's like if you're preaching to kids, you're preaching to certain kids. If you're preaching to that's a sign. That's a part where like this way. As opposed to, this is the way I preach. So I'm bringing my show here, as opposed to adjusting it.
Oh, yeah, just doing things differently, not entirely, because I'm still new, but I definitely think.
For me, it's the application part in the sense that I forget at times that people have problems.
I'm always telling
We have problems, we're not dealing with right now.
Right.
When you're dealing with a big one, you can preach to them. Sometimes you forget, you need to apply. That's something that you try to do there.
Okay, bring it back together in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Anyone want to share anything you discussed?
I think my friend here had a very good point.
Okay.
In tell her what you told us.
Oh, on the Spanish church, my biggest or toughest situation is when I have to, everybody preaching in Spanish, because Spanish community.
It's a Spanish church.
Spanish church, but the hardest issue is when all the preachers needs to get into the kids, all the kids, basically they don't speak Spanish very well, so they just do English for school, at home. So sometimes even the kids approach me and say, what do you mean when you say something? So then I have to make a special class to explain some points, But that's and I see that only in me, it's the other preachers too, because we have a lot of kids growing with English fluently speaking, not Spanish.
Very good. Anyone else?
We were saying it's hard to keep young people anyway. I mean, as we get older too, I find I don't speak their language. They have their own all dialogue, and it's hard. I think the younger people, that's the tough ones to reach.
One of the things that I find challenging is working in a church where you have Native Americans and their understanding of God is really, really hard. You have to try to help them to understand that great Father that they worship is the God. Yeah, challenge.
Because people always come with that background of their own culture, right? And a little piece of them always stays within them. You know, like my concept of sin growing up as a Catholic, I'm sure is very different than a lot of you who grew up Adventist, right? It's you always, no matter what you study and believe and change and understand differently, there's always that kernel that stays with you. And I listened to you speak about the young people and the Spanish and the language. You know, it's really a battle between two cultures, right? The wanting to hold on to the old, but still move on to the new, right? It's difficult.
Can I just a comment? You had the question, who's the hardest to reach, who connects best? A wake-up moment for me, I think the people that I connect with the best are the people that are like me.
Yes.
The people that are within my age group, the people that have the same background. The ones that are hardest to reach are the ones that are different.
Yes.
The challenge, when I was pastoring at Westville here in Syracuse, after about a year and a half, I took a look out there one Sabbath, and there were more brown faces and dark skinned faces than when I first got there.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have a different churches, Adventist church in there, and I went home and I said, well, what happened? And I thought, well, I mean, the church is growing, but there's no. I mean, some of that's happening, but some of it is people connect with the preacher.
That's right.
And the thing that struck me was like, Miguel, what are you doing to connect with people that are not like you? And so that's kind of what's been in my mind. I connect with people easily that are like me, but if I'm preaching, I have to figure out what makes these other people tick.
Absolutely.
And find ways to reach them. And so that's just an interesting question.
Absolutely. And that's why I had to do this little quiz on your learning style, because your tendency would be to preach to the style that is your style, but you have to make sure you hit those other ones. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing. Intentional, yes. That's a great education word. We use that word all the time. You can.
We are just connecting with people like us.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so if we put all of this together, all these learning styles, we can have kind of a format for the balanced sermon. So we have the structure, that would be which style? Analytical. The story, that would be auditory. The visual, well, you know, that one's easy, that's the visual. And the application, that would be for which learners? The experiential. So the structure, the clear main point, the logical flow, the organized message. Then the story, the biblical narrative, the personal testimony, the real life example. Stories make truth memorable. You may walk away from here today and you'll forget about the fires and Peter and the cock crowing and all those things, but you probably won't forget the story that the pastor told about his daughter, right? Well, depends if you're that type of learner. Visual, one image, one object lesson, one key phrase. Simple equals powerful. And then the application, what should I believe? What should I change? What should I do this week? That's what you want your congregants to be asking. Application drives transformation. Remember, we started in the beginning, truth understood plus truth felt equals transformation. We want transformation. So I will leave you with this. Model your preaching after the preaching of Jesus. Jesus did it perfectly. He was the master teacher. He hit all the learning styles. Preach the word. Be prepared in season and out of season. Correct, rebuke, and encourage with great patience and careful instruction. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.